Hello, my name is Catherine Plata, and I will be talking about the effects of climate change on cetaceans. So, in class, we already talked about cetaceans, so let's review them really quick. Very early in class, we learned about cetaceans, which I remind you are large, fully aquatic mammals with streamlined bodies. Cetaceans include whales, dolphins, and porpoises, and within them there is a very large range in sizes, but this order does interestingly include the largest living animal, which is known to be the blue whale. You can see it in the picture at the bottom of the slide. It has been measured to grow as long as 33.6 meters. So, some incredible adaptations cetaceans have are having a blowhole, which is a small opening at the top of their heads, from which they take breaths by peeping the blowhole out of the water. Mammals, being mammals, they have lungs, so they do require to take in that air. And even though they do have lungs, they do have the ability to stay underwater and hold their breaths for a very, very long time without needing to surface, but they do need to surface eventually. They also have echolocation, my favorite skill. It's a super cool skill they use to locate objects or other animals or others alike to them with the sounds that they make. There are many, many more adaptations that cetaceans have, but I felt the last important one I should mention would be blubber. There are many cetaceans that live in very cold water, but blubber is this very big layer of fat that helps keep them warm and help keeps their temperature stable. So now, as we always do, let's talk about climate change. As we all know, climate change has been a great issue that continues to grow with time. It is well known that it is mainly forced by human activity. Um, Climate change happens naturally, but our human activity since the 1800s has helped it grow a lot stronger and a lot faster. And there has been great increases in greenhouse gas emissions, and there has been evidence and correlations with it being responsible for global warming. These gas emissions, they trap the sun's heat and cause everything to warm up, and everything is happening very fast, very fast, very quick. So now, what does anything have to do with the ocean? The ocean is obviously greatly affected from climate change. Since the 1970s, the rate of ocean warming has more than doubled and continues to grow. So not only does everything around us get warmer, but the water gets very, very, very hot. So, climate change has caused an increase in ocean acidification due to a decrease in pH. And climate change has also caused a decrease in oxygen levels, and it has also changed patterns of ocean circulation. So, all of these effects have a great impact on so many marine organisms, as it could affect their behavior, distribution, and even physiology. So, talking about marine organisms, how does it affect cetaceans? The effects climate change have on the ocean clearly have to have some effect on cetaceans, and through my research, some references I'm using for this presentation dive deeply into how there can be some correlation with climate change and whale strandings, which is a very drastic phenomenon that has happened very often, it's seen very often, and kills them very easily. Warm water has been found to increase the amount of stranding, so these sources see it as important to keep stranding numbers in mind, and I will be discussing them further into the presentation. Other effects I will be discussing is how it causes change in cetacean distribution and how it also causes them to change their breeding habitats around, so migration will also be kept in mind in these topics. So now let's dive deeper into cetacean strandings. Another name used to refer to this event is beaching. That is the common name most people hear. And this is a phenomenon in which cetaceans strand or beach themselves on land and often die. We usually find them on the coast at the beach, just on the ground. And some do this intentionally for hunting, such as orcas. They accidentally go and hunt into the coast but accidentally strand themselves and often die. And other times, it could be for many different reasons, such as disease, old age, weather, and so on. A study done in 2004 focused on a cetacean community found in northwest Scotland. They analyzed strandings that were recorded from 1948 to 2003 of many different species. And one community they found that was giving them meaningful results was the white-beaked dolphins, which is the one in the picture. White-beaked dolphins are cold water species, so it is widely expected they won't do well with temperature risings. So throughout the study, it was found that the frequency of white-beaked dolphin strandings decreased from 90% to 0.5%, as so did the frequency of sightings. So this must have meant that their distribution was changing in the process, and so it was concluded that the warmer temperatures pushed the white-beaked dolphins to move towards the poles, changing their distribution completely. So now another study that focused a lot on the number of cetacean strandings was one done in 2015. It focused on anthropogenic climate change and how it could have been a possible cause to large amounts of strandings in the past. And they studied climate changes that occurred around 8,200 years ago and predicted that even though it may not have affected the cetaceans directly, there are different factors climate change caused that affected the cetaceans greatly. So, some of the factors are change in distribution of prey and ocean circulation. So, the abundance of prey would shift and change greatly because of the climate change, which affect their predators, with high feeding requirements, such as cetaceans. So, these factors were predicted to cause physiological stress, which led to stranding. So, these mass strandings are assumed to be the reason as to why cetaceans have such low genetic diversity and strong population declines from very, very back in time. So now this next study mainly focuses on how global warming affects cetacean distribution in the western Ligurian Sea in 2007. To go about this study, they measured sea surface temperature and focused on the changes in distribution of striped dolphins, fin whales, and sperm whales. Measurements were taken from 1996 to 2000, and it was found that striped dolphins and fin whales avoided extreme values of sea surface temperature, while sperm whales preferred them. So, these results led to the conclusion that climate change does affect cetacean distribution in the western Ligurian Sea and will most likely affect around the world. Cetaceans will move around and switch places, and this may continue to go about as water temperatures continue to increase with time. So now, the two studies I will discuss now focus mainly on humpback whales. Humpback whales have specific breeding and feeding grounds, and in the next slide I will show you which places these are. Baleen whales are known to be great migrators and travel very long distances to find the right nutrients at the right time. So, it was hypothesized in both studies that climate change will clearly affect these migrations and breeding ground locations because, alike to how I stated earlier, climate change causes prey abundance to shift. So, for the whales to travel all the way to their special locations to find that there isn't enough food or nutrients for them is a really big issue, and therefore will most likely cause them to change and move their breeding spots around. So, both studies concluded that it's undeniable these breeding spots will become too warm for the humpback whales to remain in, and they want to research more on this topic because the whales may encounter big risks and challenges when moving these important breeding spots around. So this map correlates to what I was talking in the last slide. Each blue spot with a letter is what is identified to be a breeding ground for the humpback whales. I find it very interesting how they're all aligned across the map, so it shows that those locations must share the same temperature and factors the whales are looking for. And it's more on the warmer side, but now it is thought that these places will get a lot warmer, so the whales will become uncomfortable with that, and they might move their breeding grounds more towards the poles. So, closest pole there is to these locations is the South Pole, so most of these locations might move more south, where they will encounter many different new possible threats that could affect them. So, another grave problem I thought it would be important to mention that climate change causes for cetaceans is that they aren't being given the ability to properly recover. So, many cetaceans, especially baleen whales, have gone through many drastic threats that have almost resulted in extinction. One very commonly well heard of is whaling. It was a very, very common practice in the past, and regulations have helped in preventing it, but these populations were still left very affected and very low. So, regulations were put up in hopes of recovering these populations, but climate change is not helping them recover whatsoever. So, climate change is causing distress in many different ways for cetaceans, and it's making it very difficult for these populations to properly grow and recover. So, in conclusion, alike to most living things on the planet, cetaceans are greatly affected by climate change. As the waters increase in temperature, multiple factors such as ocean acidification or changes in circulation are causing trouble for multiple ecosystems, which affect those who depend on them, such as cetaceans. With their special spots in the ocean getting warmer, most cetaceans are looking for a cooler place to stay, but they may face multiple challenges through this change as they are not used to these kinds of drastic changes. They've been used to these spots for a very, very long time, so having to change in very little time, they will face many different challenges. So I believe new research on wherever the cetaceans are moving to should be done and monitored to help these creatures thrive in case they need it. This new research could possibly lead to their successful recovery that we've been looking for many years. So these are my references. If there are any questions, we could comment them down below, and thank you for listening to my presentation.